So all the people here are like really important. Yeah, I think you do. I only see one person. Oh no, they have copies. Over there. They have copies. They have copies. Oh no, please have
Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry about the delay. We're just waiting for the Year 5 students to join us, and as soon as they arrive, we'll commence with the ceremony. Thank you.
Should we just start? Okay.
Ready?
Will I like move over?
Yeah, move over when it's time to go. Welcome to NIST ANZAC Day service. I'm Maya,
I'm Mackenzie.
and today we'll be your MCs for the ceremony. We'd like to warmly welcome our heads of school, Mr. McFarlane, Mr. DL, Kun Mick, and Mr. Koskinas. Please also welcome Mr. Justin Alves, who is here on behalf of the New Zealand Embassy. And of course, a warm welcome to all of our other guests.
Today we assemble as a school community to remember all veterans, servicewomen, servicemen, and civilians from all countries who have lost their lives, suffered, or continue to suffer due to conflicts of war.
In Australia and New Zealand, we do this every year on the 25th of April, ANZAC Day. It is a national holiday where students, families, veterans, servicemen and women gather together for a ceremony similar to this one. We would like to show a short video clip that explains some history behind ANZAC Day and why Australians and New Zealanders commemorate it on this day.
Many, many years ago, in a land very far away from our little home of Aotearoa, Europe was a land of war-stricken poverty, where food was rationed, the sounds of bombs ringing off in the far distance was a frequent playground sound, and women and men fought in a war between the strong and powerful German and British empires. The people of Australia and New Zealand declared their support to the British Empire. "If the old country is at war, then so are we," shouted Australia's Prime Minister Joseph Cook. all men, young and old, pledged their commitment to the war with great excitement. A group of Australian and New Zealand troops rallied together to form the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, the ANZACs. This group of soldiers travelled by boat, and on the 25th of April 1915, they arrived on a coastal beach on the Gallipoli Peninsula in Turkey, where they stormed the sandy shores armed and ready to fight in aid of the British Empire. The Anzacs were met by a strong and fit army of Turks. They fought to keep hold of their territory. So many men on both sides of the war lost their lives while fiercely fighting for their countries. After 8 months of fighting, with more Anzac troops being dropped off to join the battle, and with still no success, the British government called for the evacuation of the Anzacs. The Anzac troops were lucky to withdraw during the night without casualties. Many men were lost during this battle, while fighting with honour and wearing their country's name. This is how we have come to have a public holiday called ANZAC Day on the 25th of April. On ANZAC Day, we remember our fallen soldiers those many years ago on that sandy peninsula. We remember the survivors and all the men and women who fought selflessly in battle for their countries. We remember also the families at home who lost their loved ones, lest we forget.
Now I'd like to welcome Deputy Head of Secondary Kun Mick to talk about the significance of ANZAC Day for us and why it's important to remember.
Lest we forget. 3 short words which make a powerful commitment to remembrance. When I was the age of the students here today, I would head off to the ANZAC Day commemoration each year and mouth these words at various points in the ceremony without really knowing what I was saying. I knew we had to do it. It was what Aussie kids did alongside their parents and other community members. But I'm not sure if then I fully understood the reason why or even what it meant. I think it's important to understand why we do things like this ceremony. And when we say, lest we forget, we should know that it means should not be forgotten, and understand who, what, and why we are committing ourselves to remember. We should remember the young men from Australia and New Zealand who first fought under the ANZAC name on the Gallipoli Peninsula, far away from their southern hemisphere homes. We should remember them for their commitment to serve their nation's interests, for the suffering they and their loved ones endured, for their bravery, their camaraderie, and their sacrifice, lest we forget. We should remember all the other Australians and New Zealanders, men and women, who have fought in or risked their lives to support the soldiers, sailors, and air crews in the many armed conflicts which have occurred since Gallipoli in April 1915, the rest of the suffering in World War I, the long and terrible incidents of World War II, the confrontations in Malaysia and Indonesia, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and more recently, Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. All of these conflicts saw sacrifice and loss, lest we forget. We should remember the peacekeeping operations to more than 35 conflict zones since 1947, where Australian and New Zealand military personnel have risked and given their lives in attempts to quieten down the fighting in those areas so the citizens of those countries have a chance to live in safety, lest we forget. We should remember all of the service women and men and all of the civilians from all of the nations of the world who have made the ultimate sacrifice for their country, lest we forget. We should also remember that there are currently more than 55 different armed conflicts around the world, with more than 50,000 people already killed so far in 2022, many of them civilians caught up in fighting. We know about the war in Ukraine through our news services, but we shouldn't forget all of the others as well, including our neighbouring country of Myanmar, which is experiencing great challenges at this time, lest we forget. We should remember that war is not a game, and while there may be winners, everyone always loses something in violent conflicts. Sometimes it's territory, sometimes it's control, sometimes it's truth. Always, it's a loss of lives and imagined futures, lest we forget. And finally, we should also always remember that we are fortunate members of a school community, diverse in nationality, ethnicity, religion, and political views. A school which promotes and models non-violence. A school which hopes that all of our students and their families and loved ones will be safe from war and its costs. Because of what we learn and remember about what has gone before us in history, we hope that our students will work to create peace on our planet, to use their skills of understanding diverse perspectives, to engage in open discussions, to negotiate, to compromise, and where possible, to always avoid violent conflict as a problem-solving strategy. Lest we forget.
Thank you for that, good Mick. Now I invite Mr. Justin Els, from First Secretary from the New Zealand Embassy, and Harry, Otto and Simon from Year 5 to lay wreaths on behalf of the New Zealand and Australian embassies. We thank both embassies for their thoughtful donations.
At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
When you go home, tell them of us and say we gave our tomorrow for your today.
Thank you for that. Now Matthew Norton from Year 11 will read the lyrics from the song Cliffs of Gallipoli.
There is no enemy, there is no victory, only boys who lost their lives in the sand. Young men were sacrificed, their names are carved in stone and kept alive. And forever we will honor the memory of them, and they knew that they would die. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Charlie Adair from Year 1 will read the Ode, which is an excerpt from a poem that is traditionally read at ANZAC Day services.
They shall not grow old as we are the left grow old. It shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning we'll remember them.
Thank you, Charlie, for reading that beautiful poem. Please all stand for the last post played by Nathan Lee in Year 10. After Nathan finishes playing the trumpet, we ask you to remain silent for 1 minute in remembrance for all those nations who have died helping their countries due to conflict. During this time, you may like to think of people who have helped you, or say a prayer for those who are suffering from the effects of war at the moment. Perhaps you would just like to be still and listen. You do not need to close your eyes, but we ask that you show your respect by not speaking during this time. The minute's silence will finish when Nathan finishes playing the rouse.
Thank you, Louis and Taika, for raising the flags. A flag at half-mast symbolises remembrance for people who have died. Raising the flag indicates the end of the service. In a moment, we would like to invite Year 5 students to place a red poppy flower on the board. Poppies are another traditional symbol of remembrance in many countries around the world.
Before we do that though, we would like to invite Kenzie Holman to read a poem about the significance of poppies. It is called The Inquisitive Mind of a Child.
Actually got no idea, but maybe there's something here.
The Inquisitive Mind of a Child. Why are they selling poppies, Mummy? Selling poppies in town today. The poppies, child, are flowers of love for the men who marched away. But why have they chosen a poppy, Mummy? Why not a beautiful rose? Because, my child, men fought and died in the fields where the poppy grow. But why are the poppies so red, Mummy? Why are the poppies so red? Red is the colour of blood, my child, the blood our soldiers shed. The heart of the poppy is black, Mummy. Why does it have to be black? Black, my child, is the symbol of grief for the men who never come back. But why, Mummy, are you crying so? Your tears are giving you pain. My tears are my fears for you, my child, for the world is forgetting again.
Thank you, Kenzie. Like many countries around the world, we hold an annual memorial service to help us not forget. This concludes the end of our ceremony, lest we forget.
Now we invite the Year 5 students to come up class by class and place a fingerprint on the canvas. We are using Aboriginal art dot painting technique to show that even though we come together from many different places around the world, we unite in desire for peace.
Thank you.